All right, team. Another Kawasaki. How the hell do we do this thing? Lots of questions going on about how to do a fuel filter and what to check. So, fuel switch and what to check, or the tap. So this is a fuel switch, or the tap. This is the outlet that goes to the carburetor. This is a vacuum pipe. So basically when vacuum gets sucked on here, it pulls a little diaphragm this way. So it goes that way and it turns the fuel on. So that happens when you're in on mode, which is that mode, or in reserve. So when you're in reserve or you're in on mode, when you've got vacuum here, fuel will flow. When you're in prime mode, PRI mode, fuel will constantly flow. So essentially what we're trying to do here is that when we don't have the engine running and we need to get fuel to the carby floats, for example, we'll put it in prime mode. Anyway, pulling it apart, let me show you. All right, so put it in prime mode. Down the bottom here, you'll find a screw. Undo that screw. And it's a countersink screw. Keep it. Now, this is the tricky bit. Always have, close in hand, a magnet, because the moment you lift this up, there is a ball bearing and a spring that's going to fall out. You can be lucky, you can be unlucky. I've been lucky this time. So there's the ball bearing, all right, and it sits into these notches, and that's how it indexes. So I'm going to put the ball bearing there, but have this close by so that you can pick up your ball bearing if you need to. Inside here is a spring. If you lose that spring, you lose that ball bearing. It won't stop you from riding, but you won't have those detents, so you won't know if you're actually in the correct area. All right, taking this off. This is dismantling the fuel switch. Oops, sorry about that. Stop it from bouncing around. The fuel switch. So this, sometimes when you've got when you're not getting fuel flowing properly, you might have a dirty switch, dirty tap. So take this off. Now underneath here, keep those screws together. Under here, you'll find a little spring. All right, it's called a waffle spring. See that? I don't know if you can see it properly there. It's a waffle spring. You can see why. Don't lose it. It puts tension on this. Next thing that comes out is this. Now this has been rebuilt because I rebuilt it some time ago, but you'll find in here, so you'll find there's a little cutout here. Now this cutout, if you actually look, there's 3 holes. Let me find a good pointing apparatus. So one hole goes to one sieve, another hole goes to another sieve, and this one goes down into here. So what this does is it switches between this flowing, or both flowing. So that's the idea of that. All right. So as you turn your knob, that's what you're turning. Now have an inspection of this rubber gasket. I'm not going to pull it out because I know this one's okay, but the reason I replaced it is because it had a cut that went between one and the other, and it kept the fuel running constantly even though it was in on mode. Check that. Now, this is a big contentious part. This is the part that everyone seems to be having problems with. When you actually take these screws off, so these are 10mm screws, they actually have a Phillips head on it, not a very good one. So use a small spanner to do it, or use one of these sockets to do it. Take one out. Now I'm respraying this motorbike, so I was having some trouble getting the fuel to run out of this, so I need to see why, and I'm pretty certain I know why. Now, when you undo this, you'll find these two. All right. Now these are called your sieves. And these sieves, the idea of them is so that if fuel has got dirt in it, these will catch the fuel. All right. So I don't know if you can see those. See behind them. Oops, sorry about that. But if you can see through them, you'll see that they're see-through. What happens is this one here is your reserve, and this is your primary. Okay. So what happens is fuel in the motorbike, when you fill the motorbike fuel up, it'll come up to here. as you ride, it'll come down further and further and further and until it gets past this point. And now you're coughing and spluttering in your motorbike. Why? Because you now have to go into reserve, and that's when you turn the handle to reserve, and now you're drawing on this, and it just gives you that reserve fuel so that if you keep going, you're not going to run out of fuel in the end. All right, so if you're not getting any fuel through here, if your delivery is really bad, it'll be this. It'll be one of these two or both that are full of gunk. Really common when you get rust inside the motorbike here, inside the tank. If you look inside, you'll see there's rust. Now these do come off, and you have to be very careful, because if they come off and they fall into the tank, you're always going to have fuel coming through the bottom because you've got no more of that extension, which is good in a way. But the downside to this is that you will suck any dirt that's in the motorbike. You'll be sucking down through here. So you really want these sieves. They really do save you. And it's easy enough. Look, I've just got the tank on its side. There is fuel in this tank. We've just got the tank on its side, just sitting up a little bit so it doesn't spill out the back, because I've already spilt some down the bottom here. The reason that I'm taking this apart is because I'm going to be running some degreaser over it. There is a little leak somewhere along here, which I need to braze up. When you're brazing up in, oh, there it is down here. So when you're brazing up between two pinch welds here, they can rust out. When they rust out, they start brazing up. And this is not a very old bike. This is a 1990s bike. All right. So I need to respray this, but at the same time, I want to braze that up. You fill it with water. You never, ever, ever braze with it empty, because your vapors will explode. And that's the last thing you need. All right. Anyway, if you're having troubles with your bike running rough, and one of us suggests maybe check the fuel strainer, that's what you're checking, this thing. If you're inclined, put it in and keep it in. All right. Don't take it out. Try and avoid even just yanking on it, because you will. They are flimsy. Look, they're just a bit of plastic. They will break. They will rip. These things cost about $60 Australian to replace, and they are very hard to get. If you ruin the diaphragm in here, which I'm not going to pull this one apart because I know this one's good and I don't want to ruin it. I've got another bike which has a faulty one, which I might post up another day on. But if the diaphragm in here gets ruined, to replace that diaphragm, it's the same one as the Zzr250, but it's about $60 just to replace that diaphragm. And you can see it's already been opened once before. It's got the wrong screw in it. All right. Anyway, so when you're looking for why is my motorbike running and the fuel not flowing properly, pull this out. Now this is if you're going to be replacing this, it's got a gasket in it. Obviously, when the last person sprayed this motorbike, they didn't replace it with a fuel resistant gasket, and so this is actually in a pretty terrible state. So I'm going to redo all of this. But the gasket itself, if you buy a rebuild kit off eBay, you'll get this gasket usually. If you're going to use gasket goo to do it, make sure it is fuel safe, because it will just disintegrate like this one is. All right, as soon as fuel touches it, it's going to disintegrate. And if you get a leak, it's going to leak from the bottom here. It's going to run that way. It's going to go straight down onto your engine, or it's going to go onto your battery, and you're in a world of hope. All right, reinstallation, complete reverse of this. But I'm done with this. Yeah, so thought I'd show you that. Hope it helps someone.